Andy is an immortal and depressive guy who lives desperate to kick the bucket once and for all. But then, out of nowhere, he crosses paths with a cursed girl who kills anything that touches her. Now he keeps clinging to her every single day, hoping to finally put an end to his boring and dull little life. The whole story begins on some random morning when a girl named Fuko had just finished reading the most recent chapter of One Piece. And the thing was so horrible that she decided to throw herself off a bridge to end the suffering. But then Andy appears behind her to prevent the tragedy, while staring at the girl with that look of someone seeing candy in a window display. Fuko then pulls out a knife and warns him that he'll die if he decides to touch her. But the crazy guy, without thinking twice, lets her stab the knife into him just so he can pull her away from the edge and ask about this killer power of hers. After putting her on the ground, he keeps waiting to see what's going to happen, but only ends up falling off the bridge and splattering on top of a passing train. Seeing that scene, Fuko starts freaking out completely because she ended up involving another innocent person in her misfortune by not being able to kill herself quickly. But out of nowhere, Andy's severed head appears flying, realizing that talk about her deadly power was just an excuse to keep everyone away. He regenerates his entire body with the greatest naturalness, just like those demons from Kimetsu, but the problem is that the clothes didn't come back with it. Then Fuko punches him in the head and runs away, thinking the guy was like a zombie. He was even offended that she kept calling him a zombie, so he threw himself like a rocket and grabbed her from behind while explaining he was immortal. At that moment, the police started showing up on the scene. So he turned his own severed legs into a rocket engine and flew off with her to the rooftop of a building far away from there. Getting there, she tried to escape, but he turned her upside down and said he would drop her from up there if she didn't tell him everything about her ability. But to his surprise, she didn't give a damn because she was already planning to kill herself that day anyway. So he started spinning her like a top until she finally agreed to tell the whole story. She told that depressing story about how her parents were going to take an international trip, so she gave them a goodbye kiss. But soon after, the poor folks' plane simply exploded in the air, killing everyone inside, including her father and mother. Since that day, she started noticing that people who touched her ended up having bad luck, and the stronger the contact, the heavier the misfortune that hit the person. It was at that moment that Andy started groping her pillows, hoping that the worst possible misfortune would fall on him. And his wish came true when a giant box of bananas fell on his head. With Andy all crushed on the ground like a squashed cockroach, Fuko tried to run away, but ended up slipping on a banana peel and fell from the top of the building. While falling, she was sad thinking she would die without having lived any normal girl experiences or without being able to see the JoJo Steel Ball Run anime. But then Andy jumped after her, sticking his own bones into the building wall to hold the fall while holding her in his arms. After that, he showed all his excitement for finally having found someone capable of putting an end to his long and miserable life. He then used his legs as thrusters and took her to his hideout, where he asked her to take off her clothes so he could use his meat sword on her, but she ran away and he went after her. While fleeing, her jacket got stuck on a piece of rusty iron, revealing Rapunzel-style hair. She started crying because she had never been able to cut her hair because of her ability. So Andy decided to fix that using one of the many techniques he learned during his incredibly long life. When he finished the cut, Fuko thanked him for leaving her looking like a hot anime character. However, Andy was super excited waiting for the giant blow of bad luck that was going to fall on him because he had just held her for about 15 minutes. That's when some weird guys in suits appeared and their boss ripped Andy's head off and stuck it in a special pot that blocked his regeneration. Before Fuko could do anything, the leader put handcuffs on her and said she was also dangerous and that their job was to go around hunting people with superpowers. He said her power was a good killer weapon, but was kind of useless because you could nullify it just by touching her with clothes. The guy insisted that Andy was also after her powers, but Fuko defended him saying he wasn't like those people. Then he tried to shut her up by threatening to kill her right away. But Fuko didn't even care about those bum agents because she was too busy feeling bad about it being her fault that Andy had been captured. At that moment, a Pikachu-style lightning bolt hit the guy who was holding Andy, and Fuko realized it was the accumulated bad luck from that special moment of the haircut. Andy rose from the ashes and pulled a piece of metal from his own head, which unlocked access to all the fighting skills he had trained for a century, allowing him to finish off those suit-wearing losers in a matter of seconds. The boss saw he was in a tight spot, so he resorted to dirty tactics, threatening to kill Fuko if Andy didn't hand over his head willingly. Even though Fuko had told him not to worry about her, Andy ignored it and threw his own severed head to the man to save her. But since Fuko was already fed up with playing the Disney helpless damsel role, she rushed toward him and planted a kiss to trigger the biggest wave of bad luck the world had ever seen. Andy quickly told her to get out of there before the bad luck hit, while he held the boss in place, allowing a meteorite to fall on top of both of them. making the building explode completely. After the explosion, Fuko was crying because she thought Andy had finally died for good, but he walked out of the building looking like he had just come out of a barbecue grill. At first, Fuko was super happy to see him alive, and Andy was surprised that a simple kiss had brought such a big blow of bad luck. Then he suggested they have sex to take things to the next level, but Fuko ran away to keep her V-card intact. It didn't take long for Andy to corner her, and he expressed his desire to unleash Fuko's greatest dose of bad luck by sticking his zombie snake inside her. She realized he was only using her because of her powers, and was thinking about how to get out of that situation because she didn't want to lose her first time to a perverted undead. She brought up the fact that her grandfather only died 5 years after she kissed him, and explained that the size of the unlucky event depended on how much she liked the person. She said she would end up hating Andy forever if he tried to force things with her, which meant he would never have a chance of getting a proper death, and Andy left saying he wouldn't let her die anytime soon. He took her to a room that had more weapons than John Wick's hideout and commented that a second group would definitely show up that day. Fuko thought they would defeat them easily, just like they did the day before. So he warned her they didn't have a chance because they also had beings with superpowers like them, called negators, on their side. Sometime later, they were riding together on a motorcycle, and when a crack appeared in the sky, Andy explained to Fuko that the group that had captured him years ago, called Union, transported themselves using cracks like that. A giant robot suddenly attacked them from behind, and Fuko tried to run to save Andy, but a Jackie Chan imitator named Shen used his powers to reverse her movements. She realized she couldn't move. Then Andy tried to launch a surprise attack on the robot, but suddenly lost all body movement. The robot sent him flying with a punch, and Fuko accused Shen of being to blame for his paralysis, but Andy said it was the giant robot doing this using his powers. Andy got into a brutal boxing fight with the robot until the robot ripped Andy's head off with a punch. Shen explained to Fuko that the group he worked for, the Union, was a special team of 10 negators who were exempt from being hunted on the condition that they carried out missions. Fuko got excited because she felt that becoming a member would make her and Andy stop being hunted, but the robot boy told her that all the spots were taken, and he tried to finish her off with a punch, but Andy saved her. Fuko touched Andy's chest and got some distance before warning that a huge blow of bad luck was on the way. That's when a giant train fell on top of them, causing an explosion, which strangely didn't hurt the Union members. They chased Andy into a building where he discovered the robot's powers, but saw some explosives which destroyed the building. When the robot boy came to deliver the final blow to Andy, Andy eliminated him by shooting him in the head with a detached finger. He then got into a wrestling fight with Shen and tried to finish him off using his sword, but Shen stopped his movement right on time. Shen also dodged Fuko's bad luck attack and said he would offer one of them a spot in the Union in place of the robot boy. Andy told Fuko to take the spot, but she refused and made a touching speech about how she wanted to do some stuff with him to repay him for saving her. Seeing this, Shen decided to help them kill another Union member so both could join the group. He gave all the details they needed to find another group member and went back to his base. After he left, Andy told Fuko not to pull that kind of stunt again and kept babbling about his plans to go to Russia to kill the Union member. Sometime later, Andy and Fuko were riding on a yacht as they headed to Russia, and some enemy jets started attacking them. Andy cut off one of his arms and turned it into a rocket launcher, which destroyed one of the planes. Fuko asked if that meant they were in the Union, so he reminded her they had to kill someone who was wearing a Union badge to officially join the group. Andy narrowed down their target to 3 negators, including a woman with the power to create invisible barriers, which she used to defeat him several years ago. He told Fuko they would be screwed if they crossed paths with her, and that made her realize that even Andy had people he was weak against. It was at that moment that the pink-haired Union woman fired a huge missile from her plant, which destroyed their boat, making Fuko get trapped under some debris in the water. Andy saved her with his undead abilities, and when they came back to the surface, he told her to raise her hands because both were surrendering to the enemy above them. However, Andy said it was all a ruse to see if she could control her unlucky ability, and he told her about the melon massage and mouth-to-mouth he gave her while she was unconscious. Hearing this, Fuko freaked out, and her bad luck ability caused a giant wave of water that launched both to the top of the enemy plane, where Andy destroyed the pilot using a special bloody sword move called Crimson Crescent Moon. They flew in the plane until they reached a certain forest where the plane exploded, and Andy saved Fuko using a special landing technique that shattered all his bones. After Andy left to get food, some Russians appeared to grab Fuko, so she ran away and reached a place on the beach where she saw a weird girl. The girl was bragging about her painting and handed Fuko a painting board to join her. When they finished painting, Fuko told her about how she used to be miserable until she met Andy, who helped her change. But the girl suddenly rose into the sky using a barrier. Andy went after her, but she sent him flying using her barrier. When he fell to the ground, he told Fuko that the girl was actually Gina, the negator who had finished him off several years ago. Gina put on her hat and farmed Aura, walking slowly up a staircase made from her barrier. Gina ran toward Andy to try to hug him, but he stopped her by jokingly threatening to cut her with his sword. Fuko asked if she was the one who had captured Andy 50 years ago, and Gina agreed before revealing she had watched him throughout his entire captivity. Fuko was confused by the fact she looked young, and Andy tried to tell the truth about the old lady's age, but Gina stopped him with a deadly barrier attack. Gina told Fuko she fell in love with Andy first, and narrated the story of how she became addicted to Andy's disinterested personality after she captured him. She said she had lost track of him after he escaped 40 years ago, but found him thanks to his recent adventures with Fuko. And Andy interrupted her monologue by spamming grenade attacks on her. She withstood the attacks easily, and walked toward him while saying she wanted him to take the Union spot alone. Andy stopped her using a flash grenade and tried to land several attacks on her, but none could penetrate her barrier, so he fled deeper into the forest. As Gina approached them, he tried to figure out what she was negating to form her barriers until she knocked him down using her hat as a weapon. Gina trapped his lower half using her barriers, and told him to give up on Fuko. But Andy said he would never let her die until he died. Hearing this, Gina walked toward him with her hat spinning like a chainsaw, and she said she would take his head just like she did 50 years ago. He told Fuko he had figured out her ability, and suddenly cut off his own head, making his blood spread everywhere. He explained that Gina's ability was called Unchange, as it allowed her to manipulate the change in the air, and he pointed out that her attacks were now visible thanks to his blood rain. Fuko grabbed his head, and he suddenly regenerated his body under her shirt, allowing her to press her naked melons against his body. Gina tried to attack Andy, but he dodged her air hands because they were now visible to him. He tried to strategize with Fuko as they flew upward, but he hit his head on an invisible field before a swarm of laser beams covered the area. Gina moved toward them with her chainsaw hat again, but Andy blocked her attack with his sword. Andy threw himself away from her and told Gina he wouldn't let Fuko die until he made her fall in love with him so she could give him the death he wanted. This made Gina even more furious, so she spammed attacks on them, and Andy repeatedly dodged until finally striking back by covering her force field in his blood. With Gina's vision impaired, they created a hole in her force field, and Fuko threw Andy's severed head inside, causing them to be hit by a massive laser explosion because of Fuko's accumulated bad luck. As Gina's life began to fade, she told Fuko how beautiful her painting was, and she cried while telling them to leave so they wouldn't see her aged and horrible face. Instead, Andy told her she was beautiful and kissed her. Man. Sometime later, Fuko was crying like a condemned woman while holding Gina's Union jacket. Then Andy told her that Gina always had a death wish. He said he promised her he would put her at the top of his hit list when he escaped from prison, and he thanked Fuko for helping him free her with her unlucky ability. That's when a giant monster appeared from a crack in the sky and took them to Union headquarters. While falling through the sky, Andy tried to hit the Union members with his finger bullets, but they all countered the attack, and he fell into a chair at their table. A masked woman named Juiz welcomed him to the Union and to the other group members. Shen, Billy, Phil, Tatiana, Ishin, Top, and Nico approached to analyze them up close. At that instant, Tatiana punched Andy, which threw him against the wall, and Billy asked her to control herself because fighting between members was strictly prohibited. But then she noticed her hands had already been cut into strips by Andy, and Juiz activated her truth jutsu power to prevent things from getting out of control. When midnight struck, Juiz summoned a creature called Apocalypse, which showed there were 6 tasks to be completed. The first task consisted of capturing a UMA named Burn, and the reward would be adding an 11th seat to the Union. The second consisted of capturing the UMA named Eat, and the reward would be discovering where a negator called Unburn was. The third task was to neutralize a UMA called Language, and the reward would be unifying all languages on the planet. The fourth consisted of capturing a negator named Unseen, and the reward would be discovering where the UMA called Summon was. The fifth task was to find the UMA named Past, and the reward would be discovering where an artifact called Rebellion was. The last task on the agenda was to capture a UMA named Spoil, and the reward would be discovering where a negator called Unrepair was. Apocalypse warned that if the tasks weren't completed by the end of August, the penalty would be adding a UMA named Galaxy to the world. When Top gave an explanation of what Apocalypse was to Fuko, she gave a passionate speech about how they needed to stop obeying its orders. But Chuiz covered her mouth, warning they had to complete these tasks to be able to eliminate the god that was on the other side of the Apocalypse book. Realizing that Fuko hadn't been convinced by the explanation, Yuiz said she had to become number 1 in the Union by achieving the best performances. At that moment, Andy grabbed Apocalypse and wanted to know which was the most complicated task. Then he suggested the task of capturing Spoil. Andy immediately accepted the task and called Shen to be the 3rd member of his team. Later, Shen commented to Andy how essential it was to wear the Union uniform, but he replied he didn't need one. Out of nowhere, the alarm went off when a UMA named Clothes escaped from his prison. When Clothes went after them, Andy knocked him unconscious, but then he took over Mui's body. A super buff Mui started going after Andy and Shen. Then Fuko took advantage of her bad luck to drop a brick on her head. With Mui knocked out, the UMA came out of her body and attached itself to Andy, becoming a complete suit with tie, which wasn't even damaged, even after taking a huge explosion of bad luck. After that, Nico received news from his maid that Spoil had been spotted in New York, and Andy got all excited because he was dying to devour some American hamburgers while on the mission. A few hours later, Andy and Fuko drove through the streets of America, and both really enjoyed the scenery. As they continued their journey, Fuko read aloud the details of their task in the quest card, which showed that the destination was the city of Longing. At that moment, Shen showed up and warned her that Spoil commanded an army of zombies manufactured by him, and when she wanted to know if they had any chance of winning, he played footage of agents who were massacred when they were checking the place a while back. That same night, Shen met with Fuko in a private corner and assured her that he and Andy would handle Spoil. But Fuko insisted she wanted to participate because completing the task would yield information on how to locate Unrepair, and she thought Unrepair would know how to help solve Andy's death problem. When she questioned Shen about his reason for accepting the task, he replied he was wanting to meet Victor, the god of victory. The next day, they landed in the city of Longing, and Andy blew up the gates with a missile launcher, provoking the zombie attack. Andy hit the accelerator driving through the zombie crowd and stopped in the city center where he unleashed a bloody sword technique called Crimson Crescent Moon to exterminate a bunch of zombies. Then he found a zombie that hadn't fully transformed, so he decided to use her as an informant for Spoil's whereabouts. But Shen warned him to be careful because the UMA had already released its power and pointed out that UMAs force their rules on everyone who enters the range without any exception. Andy then noticed a clock had sprouted on his belly, and when the clock hit 0, Andy's skin began to rot at a level that not even his regeneration power could handle. It was at that moment that Andy told everyone he was going to marry the zombie girl, and everyone was confused. Then he clarified that his half-zombie body allowed him to understand their language, and the zombie girl had made a deal to deliver Spoil's location if he agreed to marry her. Fuko agreed right away, and when Andy walked ahead, Shen made sure to point out that the task's goal was to capture Spoil and not eliminate him. Fuko then spotted a non-transformed kid in a manhole, and when she ran after him, Shen blocked her from getting closer to avoid being hit by Spoil's power. But the kid pulled out a gun pointing at them and threw in their faces that they were lackeys sent to exterminate him and his people. Fuko felt so sorry for the kid that she jumped into Spoil's range to hug him, and Shen also entered the area, so both had clocks appearing on their bodies. In another place, Andy was having his wedding ceremony with the zombie girl, and she begged him to put her zombie friends out of their misery before showing a statue where Spoil was hiding. When Andy attacked the statue, Spoil came out in his true monstrous form, which was basically a bootleg version of the Colossal Titan. Andy attacked the monster non-stop with the city bell and motivated the zombies to go after him. In the sewer, Fuko introduced herself to the boy, and he introduced himself to her as Ken. He said he had to protect his companions because he was the oldest among them, and Fuko assured him she would protect him before asking what had happened there. A week earlier, Ken and the people of Longing were enjoying life before Spoil appeared and turned the population into zombies. Seeing what had happened, Ken's teacher took him and his friends to that emergency bunker and advised them to chase their dreams before becoming a zombie. One of Ken's friends named Mi started crying, and they realized her numbers were about to reach 0. So Ken consoled her, talking about her dreams of becoming a florist. When the girl cheered up, Fuko noticed her numbers went up again, and then they heard a noise from Andy's battle up above. When they went up to take a look, they were surprised to see the zombies supporting Andy, while he used all of Levi Ackerman's greatest moves on the monster. Andy left them in charge of taking care of his zombie bride, and the boy recognized the zombie as their teacher. When Mi hugged the teacher, she thanked them for protecting her students, and suddenly a zombie bumped into Fuko. When that zombie went after Spoil, he died in an unlucky way, and when Andy saw it, he ordered the zombies to touch Fuko to become bombs. While Fuko complained, the teacher suddenly hugged her, and with tears in her eyes, Fuko returned the hug with her bare hands. As the teacher ran towards Spoil, Fuko warned that a giant blow of bad luck was coming, but Spoil grabbed her anyway, causing him to fall into a building full of explosives. After the explosion, Fuko touched all the zombie attackers while Shen put Ken and his group back in the bunker for their protection. When Fuko and Shen told Andy they had been affected by Spoil's curse, he said they should forget about capturing him and focus only on finishing him off. That's when Spoil absorbed all the zombies in the region, making him transform into a different monstrous form, and fired a huge explosion that corroded the Statue of Liberty from miles away. Moi informed Shen and the others not to let him hit them with that beam, but Spoil made it difficult for them by blasting them with several beams at once. Realizing his arm was hit by the attack, Andy cut off his arm and realized the attack meant instant death for living beings because it corroded them instantly. When he went after Spoil, he knocked him down and punched him into the ground before approaching Shen and Fuko with his extended head. Shen suddenly ran away, and the monster started giving a boring speech about how he would reduce everything to dust. So Fuko preached to him about how she would never let herself die until she achieved her dreams, and this made her numbers go up. Shen said his dream was to become the greatest creation and hit Spoil in the head with his staff, making his numbers rise drastically. While attacking the monster, Andy warned him not to get close to avoid being spoiled. But Shen said it was okay because he discovered that Spoil's field only worked around his body. He then used his staff called Nyoi Kinko to attack Spoil again from a distance, before explaining it was a special artifact excavated from China that could expand and contract at will. He restricted the monster's movements using his ability and hit him on the head several times, leaving him confused about his ability. The true nature of Shen's ability, Untruth, was that he negated every thought that entered his opponent's mind, with the only condition being that he had to like his target. When Spoil tried to blast him with the disintegration laser again, Shen negated the action. He talked about how excited he was to face Spoil because he would soon see Victor in action. While Shen continued to fight the monster, Andy touched Fuko's skin to become a human bomb again. But she was so scared she slapped him in the face. When Andy approached the monster, he suddenly fell into a crack in the ground. And when Shen went to check on him, Spoil counterattacked his ability by creating a smoke screen that blocked his field of vision. Fuko explained that nothing would spoil in space since it was a vacuum that had no moisture at all. So Shen came up with a plan to transport Andy and Spoil to space, where his ability would be useless. Shen presented the plan to Andy and made it clear, almost like a veiled warning, that he would have to release the War God form, because his normal body wouldn't survive the trip. As soon as Moi informed the coordinates, Andy wielded the Nyoi Kinko staff and took Spoil with him straight out of the atmosphere, handing the limiter card to Shen before disappearing through the portal. In the vacuum of space, Spoil realized in a snap that his main ability had been nullified. Even so, he launched a disintegration beam in Andy's face, as if spitting pure desperation. Andy regenerated instantly and awakened his divine form, emerging with that insane long hair, looking like a mythical version of an ancestral warrior in full superpower mode. Thus he pulverized Spoil effortlessly and sent his head plummeting toward the planet, determined to have fun with it. When Moi announced the mission had been completed, Shen dismissed Ken and the rest of the boys, and Andy reappeared making an exaggerated, almost theatrical entrance. Shen collected Spoil's core back to base and prepared to face the war god that appeared before him. Inside the body, Victor began to collapse when Andy tried to reassume control, and there he finally understood that Andy was fighting for Fuko. Therefore, he walked directly toward her, determined. Shen tried to stop him, but Victor ignored his ability as if it were a mosquito and knocked him down effortlessly. Fuko, desperate, touched Victor's body to activate her unluck, but nothing happened. 0. Cosmic silence. And when Victor tried to finish her off, Fuko poured out a speech loaded with everything she and Andy still dreamed of doing together. Even so, no effect. It was then that Shen, in a quick martial arts move, sent Victor flying like a rocket, and right after that, the Union crew arrived to face the guy. The team members attacked with full force, but Victor reacted by creating a new body, as if changing clothes. Juiz advanced for a direct sword duel. The two exchanged blows with absurd ferocity, until she finally managed to split Victor in half. Unfortunately, that didn't stop him. He fired projectiles made of energy from his fingertips toward Fuko and Shen. Top, faster than anything on that battlefield, grabbed both and pulled them out of the way before impact. Victor tried to crush them using Nyoi Kinko, but Shen shrunk the staff at the last second, avoiding destruction. Fuko thanked Top for the rescue, and he responded calmly, although she couldn't ignore the fact that he was running around like a disoriented chicken. When she asked how they could defeat Victor, Top admitted he had no answer, since last time they only won because of Gina. Fuko asked him to take her to Andy, but Top warned that Andy was no longer exactly her Andy. Shen put the limiter card in her hands and also a gun, and Fuko ran back to the battlefield. Since they couldn't hold the girl back, Top ended up becoming her personal horse, and ran carrying Fuko on his back while the two talked on the way. Meanwhile, the Union warriors continued attacking Victor, but he evened the fight by creating several copies of himself, managing to face each of them head-on. When Fuko and Top arrived, she pointed out which was the real Victor, the one dueling with Juiz. When he asked how she knew, Fuko explained that the real Victor was wearing Andy's ridiculous loincloth after his pants had torn. Without hesitating, Fuko jumped on Victor in a way that left her, attributes pressed against him. She explained to the group that this suspicious move would guarantee an absurd charge of unluck on him, even though she found the situation completely uncomfortable. Chuiz then warned she would bring Andy back for a moment and asked Fuko to activate the unluck as soon as that happened. Victor shouted, saying he would never let Andy reassume control, and created more clones to attack Fuko, but the Union team destroyed all of them, opening the way for Chuiz to advance wielding a sword wrapped in flames. Victor blocked the blow, and she ordered everyone to protect Fuko at all costs before attacking again. Fuko tried to reach Andy with the power of emotional dialogue. Victor tried to shut her up by firing a finger shot at her face, but Top appeared and kicked his hand away before the shot. Remembering every moment alongside Andy, Fuko shot Victor in the head and stuck her hand inside the open hole, promising to give Andy the biggest wave of unluck he had ever received. The emotional shock made Andy assume the body, and the first thing he did was kiss Fuko, promising to continue the game later. Fuko warned the group that the unluck was about to happen. Everyone fled immediately. Victor tried to go after them, but Shen blocked him using his power. And then, a colossal rain of meteors fell on the city, destroying Victor and swallowing everything around in a frightening explosion. After the chaos passed, Fuko searched through the wreckage until she found Andy and put the limiter card back in his head. A few hours later, Fuko woke up in an infirmary, completely dazed, and started arguing with Andy for being so irresponsible. With teary eyes, she confessed she was terrified of being alone again. Andy ran his hand through her hair affectionately and thanked her for bringing his consciousness back. He showed some cards Ken and his group had left and explained that the Union would take care of them in the organization's orphanage. After a few minutes playing around like two love-struck fools, they returned to the meeting room, where Apocalypse finally revealed the results of the 6 missions assigned to them. In some place forgotten by everyone, inside a building falling to pieces, a man wearing an eye patch kept the negator unseen tied to a chair. Blood dripped from his invisible body, marking the floor. The man explained, almost like someone reading a manual, that Unseen had the ability to make himself and anything he considered his property disappear, simply by closing his eyes. He commented with the coldness of a butcher that he opened the poor guy's belly precisely to prevent him from trying to escape, and then made a disgusting proposal. He would cancel his ability if he agreed to join his faction. At Union headquarters in the round room, Fuko was startled when Apocalypse appeared to reveal the mission results. She only then realized she had slept straight through until August 31st. Apocalypse announced that the first objective, capturing UMA Burn, had been successfully completed, and as a reward, the group would receive the 11th seat at the table, reserved for a new negator. Right after, he said the second challenge was also overcome, capturing UMA Eat. As a prize, Apocalypse revealed where the negator Unburn was. Then, he declared the third objective, defeating UMA Language, had also been completed. And as a reward, the entire world would have its languages unified to English. Shen tested it right away. He said something in Chinese to Mui, but she didn't understand absolutely anything. It was confirmation that any person who wasn't a negator could now only express themselves in English. Apocalypse continued the ceremony, warning that the fourth objective had been successfully completed, capturing UMA Past, and delivered the location of the artifact rebellion as a prize. Then, he announced that the fifth challenge had also been fulfilled with spoils capture. As a reward, he indicated where to find Unrepair. Fuko cheered right away, because this meant there was now a real chance to cure Andy. He, on the other hand, seemed zero interested in the idea. Unfortunately, the last objective, finding Unseen, was a failure. Andy observed that all the investigators sent after Unseen turned up dead, and deduced that Unrepair had probably captured him. As punishment for the failure, Apocalypse materialized a gigantic human being called Galaxy and launched him to the surface like a living meteor. Juiz summoned the creature Move, which teleported the entire team to a bizarre and displaced version of Australia called Tossed Australia. As soon as they arrived, Huiz explained to Fuko that now they would also have to deal with UMA added, part of the imposed penalty, since these UMAs always brought rules that could lead humanity to collapse. It was then that UMA Galaxy created an entire solar system in front of them. Nico quickly gathered a team of non-negator scientists who worked for him and had all the knowledge about that new world transferred directly to his own brain. After processing the avalanche of information, Nico reported that some aliens created by Galaxy were invading Earth. A gigantic monster called Act appeared demanding humanity's surrender. The alien villain's speech didn't last long. Chuiz used the Unjustice ability to make the enemy ships destroy each other. Afterward, she commented to Andy and Fuko that they couldn't afford to take more penalties because they were already at number 99. The 100th would mean the end of the world. She also explained that the top priority at the moment was to fill the 11th seat, because if they couldn't do that in 3 months, another penalty would fall on them. After intimidating the alien with a speech so scary that even the void trembled, Juiz assigned Andy, Fuko, and Tatiana the task of locating Unrepair. Days later, Fuko was freaking out inside a mall, surrounded by celebrities, when Andy appeared wearing a suit so flashy it almost glowed. He tried to hit on her in his usual twisted and bizarre way. A little before that, the two were on a luxury plane, and Andy explained to Fuko that the black market auction was an event involving negators, completely outside union control. These meetings were organized by mafiosos from all over the planet and always happened in random locations, which made any tracking attempt difficult. But Juiz managed to locate the next one. Andy said the next auction would take place at midnight the next day on a luxury ship docked at the port of Rio de Janeiro. The plan was to infiltrate as guests using 3 passes forged by Nico, hoping to find Unrepair. But since only specific celebrities were allowed at the event, they would need convincing disguises. Back to the present, Fuko almost had a heart attack trying on the suspicious clothes Andy had chosen for her. He explained he was trying to cause unluck by touching her exposed skin. Fuko remembered the conversation with Juiz, in which she expressed her concern about thinking she would be a burden to Andy and Tatiana. But Juiz said she believed her bad luck ability would one day become powerful enough to defeat God. She wanted Fuko to work more alongside Andy, and yes, to fall in love with him to the point of being able to reverse the approaching Ragnarok. In the present, Fuko chose a Walmart version of Cardi B's Met Gala dress as a disguise. Leaving the mall, Andy acted strange and scary again, and she used her ability to drop some common sense on him. Sitting on the beach, enjoying the sound of the sea, Andy confessed he wasn't sure who the real owner of the body was, him or Victor. Fuko, firm as always, swore she would bring Andy back every time Victor took control, without exception, without limit. She bent down to help Andy get up, but forgot she wasn't wearing gloves. As soon as she touched him, her unluck kicked in, and Tatiana simply fell from the sky like a human missile and crushed Andy against the ground. After that, Tatiana explained the plan. Andy and Fuko would enter the underground auction posing as a super chic couple while she searched the entire exterior area of the facility. Later, the improvised couple crossed through the entrance of the building where the auction would take place, both in their celebrity disguises. Upon reaching the main hall, Fuko almost had an attack when she heard some nobles talking about UMAs as if they were commenting on the price of an expensive wine. They moved away to a quieter area of the ship, where Andy explained they could only speak English because of a device Shen had given them. Fuko began to think if the people being auctioned there had lives as miserable as hers in the past. Andy, noticing the shadow of doubt in her eyes, gave a small inspirational speech before declaring he was with the Union until the end. In another corner of the ship, Unrepair was disguised as a loving husband alongside his assistant Latla. When some guards tried to take him down, he simply disintegrated them in the blink of an eye. Then he called the other members of his faction, Fun and Creed. Tatiana saw all of this happening and warned the team that 4 negators had invaded the ship. Juiz explained they were negator hunters, a group that kidnapped negators by force to fuel a revenge plan against the entire world. Fuko immediately jumped on Andy's back, clinging like a living backpack, and the two went after the criminals. Andy invaded the ballroom carrying Fuko, knocked down a guard with a single blow and asked Tatiana to deliver his sword. As soon as they reached the main corridor, other guards started shooting at them mercilessly. When Tatiana finally returned the sword, Fuko unleashed an explosion of unluck that launched them to a lower level of the ship. Andy ran down the stairs with Fuko hanging on his back until reaching a corridor completely filled with dynamite, which exploded as soon as they entered. At the same time, a negator boy named Chikara was being cornered by a guard. He used his ability to paralyze the man, but when he tried to run, he realized the effect didn't work if he himself moved. He was trapped between surviving or fleeing. There was no way to do both at the same time. Some time before, Chikara was already distressed when he noticed everyone at school, except him, suddenly started speaking English. And when he vented in Japanese, he was kidnapped by a group of men in suits. Now, back to the present, Chikara trembled as he realized his power had ceased. The Yakuza guard pointed the gun at his leg, ready to shoot, but was eliminated by Unrepair. The villain approached and explained that Chikara's ability allowed him to paralyze others' movements, as long as he remained still. For Unrepair, he was exactly the type of restrictive negator he needed. Chikara tried to pretend to be an ordinary person, speaking English at such a poor level. It was more like the improvised English of a Japanese hostess trying to impress tourists. Creed didn't fall for the ruse. He announced he would test him personally, pointed a machine gun at the boy, and started counting down. Chikara panicked. The instant Creed pulled the trigger, Andy appeared to protect the boy, using his own body as a shield. Fuko appeared right after and handed Chikara a tie-shaped accessory, which allowed him to understand their language. Unrepair opened Andy's neck with a precise cut, spurting blood, and commented that Andy wouldn't regenerate until he died again. When Andy tried to decapitate Unrepair, the villain explained that would be useless, since his power negated any form of healing. He demanded they hand over Chikara to kill him and transfer the boy's power to someone more useful. Andy ignored the ultimatum and went after him. Fuko cut off Andy's head at the right moment, and he threw a head attack, literally just the head, straight into Unrepair's face. Tatiana made her entrance, smashing Creed against a wall as if he were a fragile toy. Andy tried to finish off Unrepair with one of his sword techniques, but the villain dodged and ripped off his arms. Andy retaliated by launching his own arms as projectiles, but Latla blocked the attack using her ability. Unrepair praised Andy and Fuko's courage, but called Chikara a useless coward, saying someone so weak deserved to die because he would never use his power right. He then began to lecture about his plan to dominate the country. Andy finally managed to take Latla out of the game by throwing blood in her eyes. Unrepair launched a blade in Chikara's direction, and Andy tried to block it, but the weapon went through his arm and hit Fuko's stomach directly. Andy was about to release his war beast form, but Fuko put her hand on his face and stopped him. Unrepair fled when he heard the sound of armed guards arriving. When the guards tried to kill them, Chikara remembered his mother's final words and awakened an amplified version of his unmove, stopping all bullets in the air. Meanwhile, Creed was firing his machine gun at Tatiana, but the bullets hit her as if they were raindrops. Desperate, he threw a grenade. The explosion didn't tickle. Tatiana tried to rip his head off with a punch, but Fun intercepted the blow, allowing Creed to throw more grenades at her with no result whatsoever. Tatiana was trying to figure out exactly what Fang's ability was when out of nowhere, he pushed her brutally against the ground. That's when she realized her armor had cracked, something impossible, thanks to his nullification ability. Andy took the moment to warn her that Fuko had been injured by Unrepair, and added that they needed to defeat that bastard within an hour, because that was how much time Fuko had left to live. The news made Tatiana remember the first time she met Andy. That day, after the meeting, she called him to an isolated room with the clear intention of dueling. She declared she would never accept him on the team, as she believed Andy had destroyed Gina. While attacking with her mechanical arms, she revealed that Andy had no idea what she had felt for him for 40 years. Andy, with his usual coldness, responded that he knew, yes, that she was in love with him, and still defeated her in that dry way only he knew how. Tatiana, furious, responded with a storm of punches to vent the pain. When one of the mechanical arms advanced toward Fuko, Andy managed to save her using only his upper half, while his lower body was destroyed by the robot's arms. At that instant, Tatiana realized she would have killed Fuko if Andy hadn't put himself in the middle. Nico tried to calm her down, reminding her that the next mission would say whether Andy and Fuko really had what it took to be part of the Union. That's when Andy, completely naked, jumped on top of her without any warning. Tatiana got a monumental shock when Andy's Excalibur hit her right in the face, and her robotic suit began to overheat immediately. Nico yelled for Andy to get Fuko out of there immediately, because that armor had been created precisely to contain her devastating ability, capable of exterminating an entire city. Before Andy could take her away, Fuko held Tatiana tightly and, crying, confessed that it was she who had killed Gina using her unluck. She also explained that Andy was fighting to protect her and apologized for everything. Fuko said she would compensate for Gina's loss somehow, and, in a thread of voice, asked Tatiana to be her friend. The words touched Tatiana so deeply that she regained control of the suit, and, sometime later, the two sealed their friendship by shaking hands. Back to the present. Andy was fleeing from the guards with Chikara and Fuko in his arms. He told Tatiana he wouldn't be able to help at that moment, and she told him to go up to the surface while she opened her armor completely. Tatiana stated she would never forgive whoever hurt her friend, and then released her ability without restrictions. Creed machine-gunned Tatiana with his automatic weapon, but the bullets melted upon touching her armor. Then he tried to eliminate her with poisonous gas. Nothing worked. Nothing even scratched. Years ago, on Tatiana's birthday, her ability awakened for the first time, devastating everything around, eliminating her family and everyone who was nearby. She ran aimlessly until she fell into the hands of the mafia, who put her up to be sold at an underground auction. But Billy invaded the place and killed all the criminals, freeing Tatiana. She begged him to destroy her, but Billy just gave her a snack, saying it wasn't her fault. He explained that her ability created an untouchable barrier that started at her skin and hair strands and took her to the Union. There, Nico built her mechanical body. Billy assured her that one day that power would serve to protect someone, and that when that moment came, she should just let it flow. Back to the current battle, Tatiana expanded a giant untouchability zone, crushing the entire ship and opening a perfect field of vision for Andy to locate Unrepair. Hovering in the sky with his ladies in his arms, Andy fired a finger shot at the villain. Latla used her ability again, diverting the projectile's trajectory. Andy fired several shots in a row, all avoided. Andy charged at them, but Unrepair activated small rockets that propelled him into the air. Andy warned Chikara they had to resolve everything right there, because Fuko would die if they let the fight drag on. He asked Chikara to activate his power. The boy took a deep breath and launched his unmove again. Unrepair realized he was frozen in the air and concluded it was a stalemate. Andy's group also couldn't move. He thought it was just a desperate attempt to buy time. Andy fired another finger projectile, which stopped motionless in midair. Unrepair thought Andy had missed the target, but then realized Andy had shot from a blind spot, behind Chikara's visual range. Andy told Chikara to deactivate the power. As soon as he released the unmove, the bullet stuck in the air flew straight and hit Latla from behind. Andy told the boy to freeze everything again, but at that instant they realized Unrepair had completely disappeared from the frozen area. The wretch appeared above them and used an artifact called Blade Runner to cut Andy in half. Chikara tried to freeze him once more, but wasn't fast enough, and Unrepair sent a sequence of Blade Runner cuts toward the group. Chikara managed to stop the blows in the air, but Unrepair warned that if he blinked, everyone would die instantly. Andy then said he had almost deciphered Latla's ability and warned Fuuko that from that moment on, they would depend on the random factor of her unluck. At that moment, Tatiana returned, expanding her untouchable field and launching everyone through open space, passing through the frozen blades. Unrepair blinded Chikara by throwing blood in his eyes and sent another deadly cut. Andy deflected the attack using a bloody blow called Crimson Crescent Moon. Fuuko, overcome by emotion, gave a quick kiss on Andy's cheek. He then warned Chikara they needed his power immediately because a meteor, courtesy of her unluck, was about to fall on all of them. At that exact instant, Unrepair opened another cut on Andy, knocking him into the river along with the unpredictable meteorite summoned by Fuuko's bad luck. Thinking Andy had been finished off, Unrepair advanced on Chikara. But for the first time, the boy left cowardice aside and mustered enough courage to activate his unmove, stopping the villain at the exact moment Andy reappeared and fired a shot that went through Unrepair's chest. Latla quickly grabbed the wounded Unrepair and dragged him into the mouth of a huge sea crab, ensuring he wouldn't die that day. The three retreated and disappeared. With the enemies out of the scene, Fuuko began to despair because of the cut in her stomach. Andy showed her that his wounds were already regenerating, a clear sign that Unrepair's ability had been deactivated. Then he thanked Fuuko, Tatiana, and Chikara for their help. After that, they gave Chikara a week to decide if he wanted to officially join the Union or not. 7 days later, Andy and Fuuko waited for him outside the school. With 10 minutes left until the end of classes, they had an unpleasant surprise. Unrepair appeared there, in a miniature version of himself. When Fuuko asked how he had survived, he explained he really died from the shot Andy landed in his heart, but returned in that reduced size. He guaranteed he would recover his normal body soon. Andy didn't wait for him to finish. He landed a punch so hard on the guy that the doll flew away, losing half his teeth in the process. Unrepair, strangely animated, kept smiling. Andy grabbed him by the shirt and growled that he still wasn't satisfied with the suffering he had caused him, that shooting him in the chest hadn't been enough. Unrepair apologized and asked Fuuko about the wound. She said she had been treated by a doctor. He then handed her a pistol as a gift. As soon as Fuuko touched the weapon, an apocalyptic vision appeared in her mind, an absurd entity destroying the entire world. She screamed and dropped the object, totally terrified. Andy picked up the weapon from the ground and had the same vision. When they demanded answers, Unrepair gave the verdict. What they saw was God. He explained that his group had decided to dominate the world before this being's arrival because they realized no one had any real chance of defeating him. Andy retorted that if it exists, it can be killed. Unrepair insisted his group was one step ahead because they were capable of going to the next stage, while the Union was stuck at the basics. Before Andy could question him, he received an urgent call. Union members were facing Negator hunters at 2 different points in the world. Unrepair then revealed the official name of his faction, Under. He said they would turn the world inside out, so everything would finally become fair. After flying away, he offered that he would put in a good word with God if Andy and Fuuko joined the group. In response, Andy guaranteed, "If it exists, I can destroy it." As soon as he left, Andy declared with dangerous pride that they would defeat God, which made Chikara panic. The boy tried to flee to Philadelphia. Andy just responded, "Oh no way." Then he caught up with him effortlessly. When he noticed how enchanted Fuko was with the architecture of Chikara's school, Andy asked the boy to give them a tour. Inside, Andy told Chikara that the world would end in January if they accumulated more penalties. Chikara, in turn, said he needed to survive long enough to redeem himself for accidentally killing his parents. In the past, the boy had returned from shopping with his parents. As they crossed the street, his unmove activated for the first time, paralyzing both in the middle of the road. A truck appeared, and Chikara tried to save them, but everything happened too fast. His father died instantly. His mother still resisted for a while until her last day in the hospital, when she told her son she wanted him to grow up to help people and not hide from them. After that, Chikara tried to take his own life upon discovering he had been blamed for the tragedy, but failed, and decided to survive because he knew it was what his parents would want. The story brought tears to Fuko's eyes as his suffering echoed hers. Chikara, also crying, finally said he wanted to join the team. At that moment, his friend Rio appeared and started talking casually about college. When Andy said it was time to leave, Chikara thanked Rio for everything and said goodbye. Already inside the car, he asked Andy to erase his friend's memories of him. Andy asked Nico to do the job, and Chikara cried silently as the car drove away. Fuko then told Andy she wanted to learn how to fight. She wanted enough strength to face God. Andy agreed. Sometime later, the entire union was gathered at the round table for another apocalypse debriefing. In a flashback to the past, Tatiana was asking Billy why he was wearing spurs that day. He replied he needed the sound of them to see the space around him. Tatiana retorted that he didn't need that, because he already had her by his side, and reminded him, full of pride, that she promised to be his eyes. Billy perceived Tatiana's anguish in that conversation from the past, and calmed her down by saying with unexpected sincerity that he needed her. Back to the present, Apocalypse gathered everyone and made an announcement that left the entire round table in tension. The next 4 quests were directly linked to the 100th penalty, and this time, any person alive on Earth could participate in them. He began listing them. Quest 1. Neutralize UMA Spring with the location of the artifact Aegis as a reward. Quest 2. Neutralize UMA Summer, whose prize was the position of the Negator Unchange. Quest 3. Capture UMA Autumn, and whoever did it would receive the UMA called Ghost. Quest 4. Neutralize UMA Winter, with the artifact Remember as a prize. The final deadline to complete the 4 quests was December 31st. If they failed, the penalty would be the addition of the UMA called Revolution, something no one there wanted to even imagine. Shen asked if Moi could also enter the quests. Juiz reinforced that this time there was no restriction whatsoever. Any person inside or outside the table had permission to participate. Billy interrupted the meeting with an acidic comment. If some of them died before facing the 101st penalty, it was already the end. He stated they only needed to defeat 3 of the 4 targets, and simply suggested launching nuclear bombs at the UMAs. Tatiana almost choked with indignation, saying that would kill an absurd amount of innocents. Billy responded coldly that they would be the only losses. Juiz tried to argue, but Billy called her naive for always seeking the best possible solution, and added it was impossible for any of them to defeat God. It was then that, without warning, Billy pulled out a weapon and opened fire on everyone. Everyone dodged except Ishin, who was hit trying to protect Phil. Andy and Shen pointed their weapons at Billy immediately. Andy analyzed his behavior and concluded Billy was involved with the villains they had faced so far. While Nico operated on Ishin on the floor, Billy mocked him, and Top responded directly, gave him a kick so fast it knocked out the traitor's teeth. But Billy suddenly reappeared on top of the table, as if he had completely ignored physics. He announced the round table now belonged to the undergroup, while the other members of the organization appeared riding a gigantic volcanic creature. He declared he would be responsible for defeating God. Tatiana was paralyzed. Her Riz daddy, the man she had admired since forever, was betraying everything and everyone. She tried to deny it, saying that couldn't be the real Billy, explaining that the unbelievable ability only allowed him to hit impossible targets by ricocheting bullets and not do all that craziness. But when Unrepair called him boss, there was no doubt left. Billy was the traitor. Top went after him using movements worthy of a sprinter, but Billy stopped him with frightening ease, then regenerated using the Undead ability, which belonged to Andy. The rest of the Union launched into attack, but Billy activated Juiz's Unjustice, nullifying his companion's movements. Then, he ordered the monster burn to expel the group far away. When the creature attacked, everyone managed to dodge. Billy then asked Tatiana to hand over her ability willingly. Fuko reacted immediately, shooting the artifact in his face. Billy retreated with his group. Juiz warned that if Billy officially took the round table, they would lose any chance of facing God. Andy then offered to stop Billy using Fuko's Unluck. Juiz organized the entire union, distributing specific functions so Andy and Fuko would have full coverage, except Tatiana, who received orders to wait. On the other side, on top of Burns' flaming body, Unrepair commented he was impressed by how easy it was to manipulate the union. Billy responded it wouldn't be so simple from there on, because his former allies would soon appear to stop him. Unrepair observed it was strange to see his boss occupying the union's third seat, since the two had never met before that day. He promised to cooperate, but made it clear his true interest was in what would come after defeating God. He asked if Billy would betray them in the future, and Billy guaranteed he wouldn't. He said the undergroup didn't function by morals, justice, or ideals, but by common interests, and that's what generated trust among them. Meanwhile, Fuko was talking with Tatiana. She said that despite everything, Billy was a wonderful person. Tatiana hugged her and asked her to bring him back. With everything ready, Fuko climbed on Andy's back, and the two were thrown into the sky toward Billy's team. While crossing through the air, Fuko said they should focus on defeating Burn first and talk to Billy later. Andy laughed and provoked, remembering she had just shot him in the face. Then he confessed he also wanted to talk to Billy, because he found it hard to believe he would form an entire organization just over policy disagreements, but stated he would break his face for making Tatiana cry. When he spotted Burn, Andy asked Juiz for confirmation that everything was ready. With a positive response, he propelled himself and Fuko for a gigantic leap above Billy and his followers. Billy saw them coming and immediately activated Unjustice. But before he could attack, Andy opened his neck with a precise blow, while Fuko gave another quick kiss on Andy's cheek. Andy then threw his own head straight into Burn's mouth. Fuko warned in mixed panic and pride that a gigantic wave of unluck was about to hit everyone, and Andy was going straight to the monster's stomach. In the next instant, Burn's colossal body was hit by something equivalent to 1,000,000 volts, leaving his muscles in convulsion. One of Nico's scientists took advantage of the opening and activated the facility's cooling system, freezing the entire creature. Billy commented that would only buy a few minutes, since the UMA's fully developed body would regenerate quickly. Fuko, however, warned that another unluck blow was about to fall. The scientists, anticipating the imminent disaster, activated a gigantic special weapon and drove it straight into the monster. For a brief moment, everyone celebrated the victory, but when they looked around, they realized Tatiana had disappeared. Andy didn't waste time. He went after Billy with a Detroit smash right in the middle of the traitor's face. Billy fell, but regenerated his neck in seconds using the Undead ability, stolen from Andy himself. Andy asked Fuko to hand over all the weapons she was carrying. Billy began shooting around like a blur using Top's unstoppable ability. He kicked Andy, but Andy managed to cut off his leg on contact. An instant later, Billy regenerated the leg and used Injustice to force Fuko to throw herself off the platform. Andy threw himself after her to save her, and during the fall had a revelation. Billy's main ability was to copy others' negations, all of them. As if that wasn't enough, Burn came back to life, roaring. Juiz asked for information about Andy and Fuko, but was speechless when Tatiana informed she was flying toward Billy, carrying both in her arms. When Juiz reminded her she had given orders to wait, Tatiana responded she needed to talk to Billy, whatever the reason. Juiz then made it clear. The operation's success depended on whether Tatiana had already overcome her feelings for Billy or not. When the three returned to the platform, Tatiana tried to talk to Billy, begging him to stop. He dismissed her, said she meant nothing, and activated Injustice against her. Tatiana then released an untouchability field that crushed Billy against the wall, opening space for Fuko to hold Apocalypse. Andy threatened to kill Apocalypse right there, guaranteeing no one from the undergroup would receive any reward. But Apocalypse escaped Fuko's hand by overloading her with traumatic visions, breaking her concentration. Phil held Apocalypse, preventing him from escaping, and Billy stated he would leave Apocalypse with them for now. Then he warned he would get something called Arc, and escaped with his team. Juiz asked everyone to gather where the round table used to exist. Apocalypse, now trapped and indignant, repeatedly insulted everyone, describing various ways he wanted to see them dead. Juiz asked Nico for a damage report. Nico said the situation could have been catastrophic, but thanks to the forced draw when they stole Apocalypse, the destruction was less than it could have been. She then asked about Fuko, and Nico confirmed she would recover. Andy commented he had already found it strange when he heard Juiz's policy about accepting Galaxy's penalty. At that time, Juiz had said they should focus their forces on the first 3 quests and simply tolerate the penalty to strengthen the team. Andy found it strange because Ragnarok was approaching, and risky decisions didn't match the moment. Shen added he was also curious about the proximity between Juiz and Victor because he saw them raising each other during the battle. He remembered Andy hadn't let Victor take over the body for almost 200 years, and also that Victor already knew about Galaxy's existence before the rule was even added, as if he had lived in a world where Galaxy always existed. Miko commented that the arc mentioned by Billy caught her attention because there was no record of this artifact in the Union's databases. It was then that Juiz removed her helmet and warned she wasn't using her ability on the group. With a firm voice, she revealed that world was trapped in a loop, cycle after cycle of destruction and rebirth, all by God's hands, and the Union existed to interrupt this cycle. Everyone was shocked. Fuko gradually realized the apocalyptic images she had seen in the artifact were fragments of the previous world before the resurrection. Juiz said those flashes were records of her own incompetence, of the times she failed in previous attempts, and explained that's why she gathered such strong negators, to kill God once and for all. Andy asked why she was the only one who remembered the loop. Juiz responded, "Because I used the arc. I lived every cycle." When Andy asked for proof, Juiz said she would explain how the world began and how it ended, and began describing its destruction. The planet would be pulverized, and then a new world would arise from the fragments of the old one. She told Fuko that the meteors attracted by her unluck were precisely pieces of the previous world, which left Fuko incredulous, since at school they taught something quite different. To prove she had already seen all of this before, Juiz mentioned Andy had a mole on his right ear, something too intimate to be a guess. At that moment, everyone understood. Juiz and Victor had been partners, in bedroom dance, so to speak. Andy concluded she and Victor worked together in previous cycles because Victor remained alive even after the world's complete destruction, and that Juiz communicated with him through the arc. Juiz then explained there were only two ways to break the rules imposed by God: Andy dying or killing God. Juiz believed Billy's mutiny could only have been caused by some leak about the world's infinite cycle, and overcome by guilt, decided to take responsibility for everything and take her own life. But the entire group immediately rose against this idea. They said they trusted her, that she wasn't alone, and Ishan even set up a new improvised round table so everyone could sit together as before. During the meeting, Juiz declared they needed to recover everything the undergroup had taken from them, and above all, capture Billy. Then she assigned a special task to Andy and Fuko: verify the authenticity of a certain book, supposedly written by an artifact capable of recording the world's past and future. She pulled from inside her coat a peculiar volume. Fuko was shocked. It was nothing less than a copy of the manga Boku no Pico, which she considered, with suspicious pride, a true masterpiece. Right after, Juiz pulled out another manga, an alternate version of Blue Lock, in which a space soccer club was about to explode an entire school, until the captain executes the spiral shot of justice, destroying all the goals and restoring peace. Fuko realized the plot was dangerously similar to how Juiz had pulverized the aliens during Galaxy's invasion. Juiz spread several other strange mangas on the table and said they needed to investigate all of them because they could be linked to previous or future conflicts. Fuko commented no one knew absolutely anything about the author of these works. Then Juiz revealed the drawings were made with an artifact called G-Liner and explained that anything created directly by the artifact wasn't affected by new rules added to the world. In other words, the original manuscript wasn't affected by linguistic unification and remained in Japanese. Juiz asked Andy and Fuko two things: discover the whereabouts of the raw manuscript, and gather information about the author known only as Ano. Andy quickly deduced the target would probably be at the publishing house, and decided that to enter there without raising suspicions, they would make, together, a smashing romantic manga as a disguise. Sometime later, Andy and Fuko were guided to a special room by Miko, one of Nico's assistants. Inside, Fuko realized she knew even less about making manga than the Tokyo Revengers author knew about time travel. Andy activated creation software and started motivating her until she finally got into rhythm. While drawing, Fuko said she believed her unluck would become even more powerful if she better understood her own feelings, and would try to do this through manga creation. Hours passed. Red Bulls were consumed on an industrial scale, and finally Fuko completed her first manuscript. Andy was impressed and decided to take care of the storyboard part. Soon after, Mui and Miko appeared to help, and everything only got more chaotic when Tatiana, who was also a hidden otaku, joined the group and started participating in the process. After many hours of creative madness, Andy announced he finished the storyboard. Fuko, Tatiana, Mui, and Miko entered turbo mode and started drawing pages at inhuman speed. Juiz ended up joining the team too, and when Fuko saw the absurd level of Juiz's line work, she literally froze like a block of ice. Such was the artistic shock. Even so, she continued firmly until finishing the entire work, which she named Undead Unluck. The next day, Fuko presented the manga to an editor. After many harsh criticisms, the evaluator decided to send the manga to the contest, a small miracle. Then she took Fuko to a room full of publishing materials, and there were exactly the mangas Andy and Fuko were looking for. While the editor commented on unpublished arcs and future stories, the union team realized this was directly linked to real events that were about to happen. Juiz immediately ordered them to find Ano before the underagents arrived first. Fuko saw the editor, Tayoka, talking on the phone with the author, so she asked to speak with her, and Andy, with his intimidating presence, convinced the woman immediately. When the editor passed the phone, Fuko asked for a meeting. Ano said she would wait for them in Canada. On the plane, Andy devoured a 5-star meal while talking with Fuko about the case. He said the author was extremely suspicious. For 20 years, she only communicated with the editorial team through silent phone calls and letters. Andy also remembered the union was having difficulty finding this masked artist, and stated that this time he was willing to capture her. A few hours later, Andy and Fuko arrived at the Canadian park marked for the meeting. There, Fuko noticed it was autumn, a detail that made her shiver, as if UMA Autumn itself was there watching. They sat on a bench, ate McDonald's snacks, and discussed how they would catch the author. What they didn't know was that Ano was already behind them, calmly reading the new manuscript. Suddenly, the author asked, "Do you want to know about Billy's reason for betrayal? Or perhaps how to defeat the UMAs? About Andy's past? Or how to kill God?" She said all this with disturbing naturalness. She stated she could give these answers, but that it would have a price. It was then that several spider UMAs appeared in the park, silent and threatening. The author didn't even move. She seemed to know exactly where she was and who was in charge in that area. The author Ano explained they were about to face UMA Autumn and guaranteed that after defeating him, everyone would come out much stronger. She proclaimed the beginning of the so-called Autumn arc, but as soon as the spiders advanced, they simply exploded in goo, completely frustrating her expectation. Andy pointed his sword at Ano and asked if she really knew the future. When he blinked, Ano was already next to Fuko, warning that Autumn was about to arrive. A scream echoed in the distance, and Fuko ran to see what had happened, ignoring the author's warnings. As soon as she arrived, she relived the painful memory of the zombie teacher's death during the battle against Spoil. Minutes later, she, Andy, and Ano gathered again by a river, and on the other side was Autumn, accompanied by his creatures. Ano explained Autumn was a UMA that fed on people's autobiographies. They saw the monster transform a victim's head into a book, read it quickly, and swallow it. Autumn demanded something rarer and more interesting, and launched his spiders against them. Andy went after them with Fuko on his back, destroying several spider UMAs before firing a finger bullet at Autumn, but the attack did absolutely nothing. Autumn retaliated by transforming Andy's leg into a pile of books. Without hesitating, Andy cut it off and regenerated another. Meanwhile, Ano cut off her own left arm, replacing it with a version she herself drew of Andy's arm. With the new piece, she launched a finger bullet attack so massive it looked like a spirit cannon. Autumn regenerated everything quickly. Realizing the power escalation, Ano put Andy and Fuko in an improvised aircraft and fled before Unrepair arrived at the location. Inside the plane, Ano explained she couldn't regenerate the lost hand, as she could only manifest one drawing at a time. But she downplayed it, saying she didn't need perfect hands to draw manga. When they arrived at her base, Ano drew an autumn claw, saying it would allow Andy to increase his power by connecting to his own past. She hit Andy with the claw, and his body transformed into a gigantic book, so colossal it exceeded the Earth's atmosphere. Fuko was speechless seeing the absurd size. Ano explained the volume included not only Andy's life, but also Victor's part, which justified the centuries of pages. When Fuko asked if she should read it all, Ano said she didn't need to. She just had to enter the book. With the artifact Soul Calibur, she transformed Fuko's spirit into a kind of ethereal propulsion weapon and threw her into Andy's memories. Fuko awakened in an arid land, realizing she had been thrown into Andy's past. Soon, a cowboy appeared ready to shoot her, but an older version of Andy saved her with a clean shot. When she called him Andy, he said he didn't know who she was talking about. His partner, Josh, grabbed Fuko by the collar, accusing her of trying to seduce the captain. Fuko, distressed, let out some words in English and explained she came from the future and knew Andy's fate. He then took her to the bar of a woman whose daughter they had saved. After a few drinks, Josh collapsed drunk. Fuko asked to join the team, and Andy tested her with a courage test, which she passed easily by trusting him so much. But the calm didn't last long. Bandits appeared out of nowhere and opened fire. Andy's companions protected her with their own bodies and died. Andy lost control, massacred all the criminals with improvised axes, and finally accepted he was an undead. The next day, they buried their dead companions. The bar owner, devastated, took the blame for attracting the enemies. Andy told her to pour some whiskey on all the graves every year until the end of her life. After that, Andy and Fuko traveled together for a long time, fighting criminals and monsters. One random night, their new allies, Ash and Camus, laughed at the idea of Fuko being a bad luck negator. To prove it, she used the ability to make the waitress spill beer on them. Later, by a river, she and Andy talked about death and destiny. He then asked her to advance to an older memory. Fuko, crying, promised she would kiss him in the future, and disappeared in the mist. She reappeared in front of a building, another point in Andy's past. At that moment, Victor appeared and ordered her to leave. Fuko refused. She wanted to know everything, no matter the cost. She tried to shoot him, but Victor instantly appeared behind her and calmly declared he would kill her. He said he would do this not only because she was invading memories she shouldn't see, but because her death would erase the only obstacle preventing Victor from taking over Andy's body for good. Fuko surrendered. He fired a finger bullet, and she died instantly. She woke up in another era within the memory, and Victor appeared again to kill her once more. In another temporal jump, she tried to flee, but Victor activated his domain technique, surrounding her in an absolute prison from which there was no escape. Andy appeared at the last instant and tore Fuko from Victor's hands, detonating the bastard with a rocket punch so violent it scattered pieces of him through the memory space. Fuko burst into tears upon reuniting with her zombie hubby, but the truce didn't last long. Victor regenerated his body and declared he would destroy Fuko to finally take full control of the body he shared with Andy. Andy responded in kind. He said he would protect Fuko with everything he had because he knew his future self needed her alive. Victor, irritated, fired a rain of finger bullets, but Andy dodged and engaged in a bloodblade duel. The advantage turned to Victor when he ripped off Andy's feet with a single cut. Andy regenerated immediately, and the two immortals exchanged blood volleys at absurd speed. Then Andy asked Fuko to release him. He needed her unluck to finish Victor. Fuko kissed him quickly and ran away, allowing Andy to release the accumulated bad luck blow in his finger. The attack exploded Victor entirely. When Victor regenerated, Andy engaged a detachable spinning punch, projected the rival upward, and made a plane fall on top of him. After that, they stuck only Victor's head in a containment capsule. Fuko, however, said she wanted to talk to him. And of course, Victor broke the containment like tearing paper. Later, Fuko asked what exactly the relationship between Victor and Juiz was. Victor came clean. He and Juiz had already tried countless times to defeat God, always failing, until she started using the Ark to restart herself in each world cycle. He confessed he wanted to kill her because he couldn't stand seeing the woman he loved suffering eternally. Before leaving, he also told Fuko she would one day become powerful enough to reach God. As soon as he disappeared, Andy kissed Fuko, and she returned to the present. In the present, Anno explained Andy was living another life within his own memories, and this would strengthen his heart. But when she realized Rip, Unrepair, and his partner had arrived at the base, Anno warned she would kill them if they tried to interfere with the memory dive. Rip advanced first, launching a cut to tear off her head. Anno retaliated and deflected the blade. Rip said he wanted to know the future through her mangas. He asked why she risked so much for those people, and then released an even bigger attack, which tore off Anno's right arm. Years ago, Anno found the G-Liner artifact lying on the ground. As soon as she touched it, she glimpsed the past and future of the current cycle, and was fascinated. She began drawing everything in manga form. When she ran to show her mother, she realized she had become invisible to her own mother's eyes, awakening as a negator had separated her from the world she knew. She saw her mother desperate, looking for her, praying she was alive somewhere, still drawing her stories. That gave Anno strength. She continued drawing, hoping to one day meet the union members who inspired her so much. She published her first romantic manga and almost burst with happiness when it was serialized. Sometime later, while exploring the future with G-Liner, she saw Andy training water-breathing techniques with a girl. She tried to hug him, but went through his body like a ghost, then watched the girl declare her love and take a rejection so brutal it even made Anno shudder. Leaping further ahead into the future, she discovered the worst. Humanity would lose, and defeat began with Andy and Fuko's fall. So she realized she could change destiny by recording everything in her manga. Back to the present, Andy emerged from his memory book detonating a negator hidden in the wall with a bloody cut. Fuko despaired seeing Anno fallen, motionless, but Andy encouraged her to prepare for combat. Upon leaving the base, Fuko touched Rip's partner, but the woman stole Fuko's weapon before falling off the roof. Fuko tried to convince Rip to join them, but he refused. He wanted to use the Ark to save the person he lost. Soon, Latla appeared bringing Autumn, and Rip and Fuko started an insane race, each carrying their partner on their backs to see who could destroy the UMA first. While the two advanced, Ano shouted that she believed this time Andy and Fuko would be capable of defeating the monster. Andy and Rip launched cuts and shots against Autumn, but the monster ignored everything. Andy struck at point-blank range, but Autumn regenerated instantly. Rip also couldn't cause any damage. The UMA began launching bookshell projectiles at Andy, who dodged, while Ano asked them to buy time for her to draw the most powerful artifact of all, the one that would guarantee Autumn's death. Rip and his allies doubted her and decided to steal the glory for themselves when Andy was hanging by a thread. While watching the battle, Ano mentally introduced her mother to everyone, including Rip, whom she called a good guy who got lost after losing someone important. With G-Liner, Ano built an artifact that returned Rip to his adult form. Rip asked why she used the artifact knowing it would cost years of life. After all, each second of activation aged the user 10 times faster. Ano, now elderly, said there was no problem, and asked him to use his power to capture Autumn. Then she transformed into an orb, disappearing. Fuko, seeing that, remembered how Ano's manga had saved her from darkness when she lost her parents and grandparents. While Andy continued pressing Autumn, Rip asked who Ano was and why Andy was helping her so much. Fuko explained everything, and said that was essential to defeating the UMA. Then Autumn absorbed his spider UMAs and assumed an even more colossal and monstrous form. He trapped Andy inside a book and tried to crush him, but Rip entered shoot-style mode and delivered a kick the monster couldn't heal. From there, the six fought together like a teenage version of the Avengers. Andy and Rip combined blows to split the UMA's body in half. With the core exposed, Andy fired an Unluck bullet, completely destroying Autumn and allowing Latla to grab the core. After the victory, Fuko thanked Rip for fighting alongside them, but when she asked him to join the Union, Rip refused. He still planned to steal the Ark to bring his beloved back. Andy told Rip that Ano was a negator with the unknown ability. After the undergroup left, Fuko lay on the grass next to Andy. And that's it for today, folks. If you enjoy anime recaps like this, comment anything in the comments. I read them all. Also, check out this other video down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.